welcome back to Shaw's Garage. It's time for yet another new bullet for the Odd Rod gasser. So Benjamin and myself are out here today beginning the assembly on what will be the next small block Ford for the Odd Rod. And this is actually a block we've run before. It'll be somewhere around 322 cubic inches. And we've already got the crank in, and this is a original Ford Boss 302 steel crank, and the rod journals have been turned down to 2.1 Chevrolet rod journals, and it will get a pair of original Ford Boss 302 cast iron heads, and they've been worked within an inch of their life. You can see they've had the high port plates done. All of the valve sizes are smaller than factory. The chambers are smaller. The heads have been cut. I think we've cut nearly 100 thousandths off the head surface. And let me roll one over here. And then you can see a lot of intake port filling, bronze valve guides. Still got to assemble the heads. They'll have titanium valves, good springs, of course, T&D rockers. And Ben has just finished up putting rings on pistons, so we're going to get those put in today before we call it quits. And I will continue to add to this video as we assemble this, and hopefully we'll be able to do maybe a dyno session video and everything, and see how this one runs. So stay tuned. Okay, we got the bottom end assembled, and everything went pretty good. You can see we had to we've pre-checked this in a mock-up, and we had just a little area on the piston and the intake valve pocket near the spark plug relief that we were a little concerned about it being close. So we've massaged those, and then once the next step will be to finish assembling the heads, and then we will clay every cylinder and put it together and turn it and look at our clay, look at our radial clearance around the valves, look at the piston to valve clearance, and just double check again that everything is acceptable, because these motors are really close. You can see, you know, they're pretty much zero deck, and then with a dome piston, and chambers are cut fairly small. Everything is super close in order to get, you know, we need above 13:1 compression, and in small cubic inch engines, that's hard to do without everything being scary close. So that's where we're at. Anyway, next video, or the next part of this video, will be probably assembling the cylinder heads. Okay, we're continuing on with the build of this new 322 small block Ford for the Odd Rod, and we've worked many hours just checking valve train geometry, getting all the rocker stands right, making sure our push rod lengths are right, and now I'm getting ready to clay a cylinder just to double check everything. So what I've done is put some little balls of clay around the valve pockets, and then we've got an old head gasket that's already compressed, and then we'll slip a head on, set up the lash for that cylinder, rotate the engine, take it back apart, and then measure and look at our clay. And I know you can look on the internet, and there's all these high-tech ways of you know, using a checking spring and dial indicator, and you know, measuring that, and then pushing the valve and measuring how far it goes in before it hits the piston, and that'll give you your piston to valve clearance, and that works. That absolutely will work. We have all the tools to do that. But what we've discovered on an engine where you're running really tight piston to valve clearance, trying to get compression, which is what we're doing. This is a small cubic inch engine, Everything has to be extremely close to make any compression. And what we've discovered is that there's enough deflection in all of the valve train. I mean, believe it or not, everything bends a little bit. Push rods, rocker arms, you know, everything flexes a little bit. And if you check it with the dial indicator method, and you've got, you know, let's just say you want 100, 100, and 100 on your clearance, 100 thousandths. And we actually will go much closer than that. But you know, that's just kind of a general rule that people like to see is 100 thousandths. And if you measure it with the dial indicator method, and you've got 110 or 100 or whatever, then you're fine. No big deal. But let's say you measured it and you only had 80 and you wanted 100. With the kind of spring pressures that we're running, what we've discovered is if you'll put it all together with your actual push rods, everything lashed just like the motor's going to be, and rotate it, you'll be amazed at how much you gain just from the flex. I've seen 20 thousandths additional. And this motor before, the piston to valve clearance was so close that there was one of the valves, when you take the engine apart, it looked like that the valve had been hitting the piston at first glance, but it was not. It was so close, there was no room for carbon to build up. So again, you really got to look at them with all the push rods, everything on it as it's going to be run. So that's why we're going to the trouble to do this clay method, and just to make sure that we've got what we need. You also need to look at radial clearance, and the dial indicator method won't show you radial clearance. And the radial clearance is the distance between the edge of the valve and the edge of the pocket. And you need about 60 thousandths there. So it's real easy to look at the clay and see not only your depth for piston to valve clearance, but also for that radial clearance. So anyway, that's the way we do it. You know, I'm sure there's 1,000 people who will disagree with me on the internet, but at the end of the day, it'll be our motor that we're, you know, abusing at the racetrack, and hopefully it'll stay together. So anyway, we'll continue on. Okay, here's kind of what we're looking at. This was my closest area where I was a little bit concerned on the intake valve. As you can see, we've got plenty of actual piston to valve clearance thickness wise. But if you look at the radial, you can see how close that gets, but that's still okay. That measures out between 50 and 60 thousandths when you get right down there. And it's hard to see on the camera, but you can kind of see right there about how thin that is. So we should be good. And we've got plenty of exhaust valve clearance. So we could possibly scoot the cam a couple degrees and close up the exhaust and open up the intake a little bit. So we'll kind of discuss that amongst ourselves and decide, but I believe we're okay where we're at. Okay, we are actually going to have to clearance the intake pocket on these pistons. Just was not comfortable with the piston to valve clearance. So here's how you do it. If you've got an engine put together, go get some of the biggest trash bags, thickest trash bags you can get, one that'll go over the whole engine. And then you bring each piston up, you clean it good, you get some of the best duct tape you can find, and you tape around it so that none of your shavings can go anywhere in the motor. And I'm actually just going to use 8 trash bags. Like when I clean this off after grinding and sanding, rather than try to tape it up and cut another hole, I'm just going to use another one. It's not that expensive, and it just keeps all those shavings and stuff and sanding dust from getting in the motor. So getting ready to get started on this one. I've already done one, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Oh, I've also got this this tool that I made out of a freeze plug, and it's going to be my gauge. So when I've got it trimmed, where this will go down in it, And that area that's marked off is actually, I actually ground the side of the tool because I don't want to cut any where the piston is really thin on the side, and that's not where my clearance issues are at. They're really, more over toward the middle part of the piston up in here. So this is kind of my go no go gauge to try to get them all close to being the same. Okay, and there's the finished product. I make a couple passes with a carbide burr, a straight cut, and then I take a Dremel tool with a sanding roll and go back around it. And my gauge fits. So that's all there is to it. 6 more to go. Okay, we finished clearancing all our intake valve pockets in the pistons and flipped the motor over. Just finished torquing rod bolts. Got the oil pump on, pickup tube, and the front cover, and getting ready to set the oil pan on and call it a night for tonight. This oil pump is just it's a Melling stock type pump, but it's their performance version of a stock pump. It's just a little bit beefier, and it's got an adjustment right there. You can change springs, and you can also run that set screw in and increase the pump pressure a few pounds. We have played with these things before. If you put the high pressure spring in it, the extra spring that they send you, man, these things will make 100 plus PSI, way too much. So we've discovered that this is a stock pressure, stock volume pump, and then we just turn that screw in. As far as it'll go, it'll raise the pressure about 6 or 7 pounds, and we've had no problems from that. So anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and get ready and set this pan on. Okay, I thought I'd show the pan real quick before I put it on. You can see it is a custom piece. It's got 2 trap doors underneath this windage tray, and you can see it's highly modified. It's got a lot of kick out. Their idea is to get the oil out away from the crank, keep it away from the crank as much as possible. This is actually an 11 quart pan. We discovered that the hard way. We run 10 quarts, and again, have had no problems. So anyway, nice looking piece. Okay, I've skipped over a whole bunch of assembling this motor. We've just been so pushed for time that you get busy and you get involved in little things and you don't think the video. I think where I left off last, we were clearancing intake valve pockets on the pistons, and then it was pretty tedious after that. Getting the valve train set up in these is pretty tedious with the shaft rockers and getting all the stand heights right and making sure push rod lengths are right, and everything looks good on the valve train geometry. So anyway, we've got it together. We've got it on our homemade run stand here, and we've cobbled together some fuel lines, and we've got some old headers that we're just going to test run it with. A couple 660 Hollies, and they've been race prep. They're actually probably as good, if not better, than the ones that we actually run on the truck. And so anyway, we've got to run it through a heat cycle, check for leaks, pull valve covers, check the valve lash hot and see how that changed. And then we're going to cut an oil filter open, make sure there's no surprises there. And if everything's good, then it'll come off of this stand and go on a transport stand, and we'll go to the dyno here in just a few days and pin its ears back, as they say, and get everything dialed in as far as air fuel ratios and so forth. So anyway, so we're gonna run it a little bit. Okay, we've finished running this in. Pulled valve covers, relashed all the valves. Everything was just super close. I just wanted to get a lash on them while it was hot. Cut the oil filter open. Had some metal in it. They all have metal in them the first time out. It was normal and acceptable. The oil was just like brand new, clean, where it lays down in the lower part of the head. So there's no sparklies in that. That's a good sign. We've got 75 pounds of oil pressure. I think we've got most of our leaks dealt with. Had a couple little oil seeping spots, and that spot right down there is where I pulled the oil filter off to cut it open and made a little mess, but everything else is good and dry. So next part of the video, I'll try to have some dyno footage and we'll wrap it up. Okay, so we just made it back from dyno and the engine today. You saw that little quick pull on it, and we were very pleased with the results. You can't look on the video screen and tell what the numbers were. So if you're trying to look and see it, it's not going to tell you. Everything happens too fast. You've got to look at the printout on the dyno, and we're not trying to hide anything anyway, because anybody that runs in Sega, they know the kind of horsepower you got to have be competitive, and it's no big secret. So, but we were real pleased with the motor. It made, if you look at average torque and average horsepower over the range that we'll be running, and that's what's really important. The peak numbers were great, but the peak numbers don't really mean that much. Those averages are what really will help get you down the racetrack. But we picked up about 25 foot-pounds of torque across the average compared to the motor that we have in the truck right now, and 35 horsepower. So we were very pleased, and we're doing it at a slightly lower RPM range. We won't have to sling the guts out of this motor quite as bad. We'll still be turning it well north of 9,000, but it looks like it's going to perform well. But again, till you get it to the track, see what it does. If it doesn't go down the track, doesn't matter what the dyno says. So, but anyway, it was healthy. Oil pressure was great. Everything, just no problems whatsoever on the dyno. So we were real happy. And I'm gonna go ahead and close out this video today. And I appreciate everybody watching this, and hope to see you at the next Southeast Gasser race. And come by and check us out in the Odd Rod pit.